the number that we found online is that the average income tax return is 1,072 euros from Finanzamt. Some get a little more, some get a little less, some have to pay, but apparently 9 out of 10 get this number. And now we have a lot of comments. We also got one yesterday writing, "What the hell, so much? I got 8 euros back last year." What could be the reason for that? Why is apparently our community getting so little, while the average is more than 1,000 euros? Do you have an idea, or maybe some tips or tricks for people?
Okay, so the tax refund, which is stated by all these online providers and so on, that's a statistical value coming from the year 2018. So to understand it a little bit more, so more than 12 million people received a refund, but also 1.5 million people had to pay. And they had to pay on average more than 1,100 euros. But as it is a statistical value, you have a lot of people who receive a higher refund than the 1,070. That is due to they have losses from real estate, they probably have lost carry forwards, they have high business expenses, they have high special expenses. For example, they pay their private health insurance, so the contribution for 3 years at once and get the deduction. So then the next year the deduction is a lot lower, but that it's a lot, right? And if you have a lot of people with a deduction of 10 or 15,000 euros, then the deduction, of course, for the other ones is lower. And basically the most the number is that you have a refund between 100 and almost 1,000 euros, right? So that is what you have to be in mind when looking at these numbers, right? So and of course the difference in the tax refunds or tax payments lays always within personal circumstances and the personal situation, right? So it depends on the family situation, if there's additional income, what deductions are possible, right? And therefore, I often hear the argument, my friend is doing the same job, they always get more money back from the tax office.
Mm-hmm.
They might have the same job, but they have clearly different personal circumstances, right? So, and what are the differences? So, what basically is decisive for the tax refund, right? So, and basically we can divide it in 4 categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one is business expense, right? So your friend is doing the same job as you, but his commute is 40 kilometers and your commute is 3, right? So that is already a huge difference in the expenses what you can deduct, right? So the deduction for commute is 0.3 euros per distance kilometer. And if it's more than 20, it's 0.38, right? So times usually 15 days per month, right? So then what is with work equipment? Does a person has a home office? What is about contributions to professional associations or trade unions, right? Then where there are application expenses for a new job. Office equipment, basically to buy some stuff to furniture your home office, for example, right? Business clothes, double household expenses. Your friend might have a second household, right? So he's living, let's say, in Munich or still in Paris or whatever, and has a second home here in Germany. Then he can claim 1,000 per month an expensive for the double household, so for rent, utilities, and so on, right? So then training costs, right? So your friend might take professional training or coaching. And this can easily sum up to a couple hundred or even €1,000, right?
German courses, maybe? Is they also included?
That depends. That is really if there's a real focus on business. So let's say business German, for example, right? Then it would be deductible. But if it's a course to get general German language speaking availabilities, then it's not deductible because that is basically for living. I mean, that is that you can live in Germany, right? But with a focus on your business or technical German for engineers or something like this, that would be deductible.
Okay, nice.
Right. So then telephone and internet costs. So moving expenses. Let's say in a year you're coming to Germany, right? So yeah, there are real expenses deductible or also some lump sum deductions, right? Or accident costs. So if you are on a business trip and you have an accident and your car is crashed, right? And you have costs involved with that. So these are all professional expenses which would be deductible, right? And if your friend has a lot of them and you do not, then of course there is a huge difference in the tax refund.
Yeah. You also mentioned home office. There it makes a difference if you have a desk at home or if you have a separate work room, right?
That is right. So there are basically two ways, right? So one is the lump sum deduction for home office, which was introduced during the Corona period, right? Which is limited. It's €5 a day for 22, right? And a maximum €600 per year. So that means if that is all what you have on business expenses, it does not matter because it's below the tax-free amount, so the Arbeitnehmerpauschbetrag, right? So, but if your home office is it has to be a separate room, only used to work in there, right? So if you have TV in there, you're dead, right?
So no living room, because I know the community, they always try to exploit if they can. Living room or bedroom doesn't work.
That is right. You have to have a writing desk, a chair, a bookshelf, right? That's it. I mean, even a couch is kind of might cause problems, right? I mean, but important is it has to be a separate room, and it is usually only accepted if that is an extra room. That means they say if you are a two-person household, you have to have 3 rooms to claim a home office, right? So if you have 2 kids, so 4 persons, you have to have 5 rooms, right? Because otherwise they say that's kind of living, it's a kid's room or whatever. So the second point is that you only can claim it if it is either the center of your work. So basically, if you are self-employed and you're working from home, for example, right, then that's clear, and then you can deduct all costs. There's no limit on it, right? If it's not the center of your professional activity, like for a teacher, right, because the teaching is in school, but he needs a desk to prepare for the lessons, then it's limited to €1,250 per year, right? So, and of course, the other precondition is there is no other place where it can be done, right? So there is no desk in the school where he could prepare for his lessons. So these are basically, in a nutshell, the rules for home office.
Why complicated?
There's the saying that the German tax law is one of the most complicated ones. Okay, so then that was one. The second one is special expenses, Sonderausgaben. So what are special expenses? So that first health insurance and pension contributions, right? So if you are employed, that's an obligation anyway, right? And that's usually already deducted by the payroll. Still, and we come to that in another video, you can voluntarily pay more into a pension contribution, right? So which will basically increase your deductions, but it's not yet reflected in your tax withholding. Right? And of course, if you are self-employed, that there's anyway no tax withholding. You anyway have to file a tax return and you can claim these deductions. So what else is special expenses? Donations, right? Donations and also donations or membership fees to political parties, right? So important for donations is uh, the donation has to be to a German or at least European entity.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, so if you are donating for the World Wildlife Fund, it has to be to World Wildlife Fund Germany, not the US. So if you have, let's say, a permanent wire transfer to World Wildlife Fund to a US entity, it's not deductible, right? So pay attention to it. You might think then about how you donate. So church tax. So if you're a member of a church, you have a church tax withholding in Germany, and you can deduct the church tax.
One question about the donations or sending money abroad, because we get this question sometimes from people if they, for example, support their parents. I think, but I'm not sure, if you would support your parents in Germany, then I think there's some tax things, but you know better. But what if, for example, if my parents are in India, does that work too?
That might work too, but
Okay.
that's a third point. That's extraordinary
Okay.
burden, and I come to that later.
Okay, like yeah.
Okay. So then contributions to a restart contract would be deductible, or alimony payments to a separated or divorced wife up to special amounts, so which is almost 1,400 euros, but the other conditions have to be considered. Then vocational training, so that means costs for your first professional education, erste Berufsausbildung, but maximum 6,000 euros a year. Then school fees for kids, if you are sending your kids to a private school, 30% of the school fee is deductible, but maximum 5,000 euros. And childcare costs, so costs for kindergarten, for example, or for a babysitter, 2/3 of it is deductible, but to a maximum of 4,000 euro. And renovation costs for an owner occupied or rental historical building. So that's kind of special. It's just complete, yeah, right? But also, especially with the childcare costs and for a babysitter, I mean, other conditions have to be fulfilled. I mean, there has to be an invoice, and it has to be a wire transfer. So if you give the daughter of a friend of yours 50 euros cash into the end, so that's not deductible.
That doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the third point is extraordinary burden. So these are first lump sum deductions for disabled persons, right? Then there's a lump sum deduction for children in education which are living away from home, so living separately, so have their own flat. Then sickness costs, right? So that means, I mean, this is for the costs for sickness or glasses or some dental prosthesis or something like this. So that might be expensive. So that is deductible, but only if it's called reasonable limit is exceeded. So, and that what is reasonable, that is determined and is depending, it's a special percentage. It's between 2 and 4% of your income. But what the percentage is depends on the the amount of your income, so how much you are earning, and the family status, family size. So if there are kids to be considered or not, right? So it's a little bit complicated, and to be honest, that for sickness costs that usually only comes into account if it's a couple hundred or even 1,000 euros.
Right? So if you would be a single person making, let's say, 100K, so big income, and you buy new glasses for 100 euros, then that's probably not going to work.
Forget it about it. Okay. So in this case, the reasonable limit is, I guess I have to look it up. It's 4% or something like this. But from 100,000, I mean, then you have already 4,000, which do not count, right? So, yeah. So, and then support of parents, for example, right? So if you are required to support them because that's the only source of income they have, like because they are living on a village in India, that might be possible, but it's not easy to get the deduction because first you have to wire transfer the money, so you have to prove that you really supported them, right? So that money goes from here there. Then you have to get a confirmation from the foreign, so let's say in India, official institution that they do not have any income and that they do not get any governmental support. So that you really have to support them. There are forms available, but to be honest, to get acceptance by the German authorities is not that easy, right? So, I mean, a stamp from India, I mean, that could be anything, right? So, as I said, it's a complicated process. The deduction is limited anyway, and you really have to think about if the effort you have in getting this deduction, it's really worth it.
Okay.
It's a lot easier, let's say, within the EU, right? Because it's more aligned, but that you have parents within the EU who do not get anything, that's also very rare, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the result is it's possible, but it's complicated.
Okay.
And I have, from my experience, I have basically no clients who really go that way, right? Because it's too much effort. So, and then the fourth point are basically other tax reductions. So, what is that? So, one is tax reduction for energy saving measures in buildings used for own residential purposes. So, if you have your own house and you do something in order to support climate saving, right? And the other one is, and which is more common, and basically everybody has, is tax reduction for expenses for household-related employment or household-related services. So, like cleaning, right? You have somebody cleaning your house or your home, and for craftsman services. So, if they are repairing your dishwasher or you're renovating your house or your apartment, right? So that 20% of the costs are not deductible. They will be directly offset against your tax liability, right? Of course, there are preconditions. It has no cash payment, right? So wire transfer is necessary, and you have to have an invoice, right? So, and as I said, basically everybody has it. So if you have rented an apartment, then you get at the end of the year, or usually the middle of the following year, you get a final invoice.
Nebenkostenabrechnung, yeah.
Yeah. So, and the landlord is required to state these expenses, which are called expenses according to paragraph 35A income tax code. They have to issue a certificate that's all stated, and you can basically take these amounts, put it on your tax return, and 20% of that will be offset against your tax liability, as I said. Right? So, and if you are owning an apartment or a house, then I mean, you have repairs or some maintenance services on this house, which you then except you do it by yourself, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's these basically are the four reasons why tax refunds are usually different individual. Right?
Okay.
So
So as always, it always depends. That's what the community loves. That I always say it depends. But in this case, it's true again. It depends on your personal situation.
that's right. Yeah.
If people have further tax questions, Dirk, how can you help?
I mean, of course, you have to contact me, right? And then basically, what I do is I conduct a Zoom meeting for a quarter of an hour to get to know the person, the requirements, and the topic and the expectations. And then tax advice has a lot to do with trust, right? So both parties, so you and I have to say, okay, we can work together, right? It does fit, right? And I have the trust in that person, right? And then based then on the information I get from the interview, then I can basically talk about the process, how it works, and of course also about the fees. What does it cost?